Hi, it's Tuesday at 6:30, so it's time again for what we're reading. I'm very excited to have a coworker on tonight. I have Shauna, who works with me at the Amy Van Andel Library, but I also have Anna, who works at the East Grand Rapids, which is our partner branch. So I've got Shauna and Anna. They both end in a so I might get them confused. So, hello, Shauna. How are you doing tonight? We'll start with you. You're next to me. You know my question. Shauna, what are you reading?
Well, thanks for having me, Penny. It's a pleasure. So, what I am reading is I just finished a teen book in verse. It is titled
I
The
feel like
Poet.
half the audience just shut us off.
But
It's mean and it's inverse. No. Wait,
it
last
doesn't read like a book in verse, not at all.
Okay, what is it?
The
Let's
The
see.
Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I
Okay, have you
probably
got it with
butchered
you
the
or no?
last name, but that's what it is.
Okay.
But I did not read the book. I listened to the audiobook and it was narrated by the author. So
Oh,
I
I
feel
love
like
that.
if you're going to read a book in verse, read it by the author narrating it because they know
Yes.
the timing. It's like a, reading a book by a comedian, If you
Oh, is it
listen
funny?
if you listen to no, it's not a funny book.
Okay.
It's serious, but it's just really good because it takes place she's in high school. She's a twin and her brother kind of sees that she has this gift of writing and poetry. A teacher sees that she has this gift, but she's always fighting it. And then, like, this really major incident happens at home with her mother, and she swears she's never going to write again. But then she ends up doing a poetry slam, and
At the
she
library?
no, I don't know. I can't remember. But it's just such a good book because it takes place in a really urban setting. It takes place in, like, I think New York City or in like a Brooklyn neighborhood. The author has like this unique accent down, and some of like the terminology. It has like some Spanish in it, so they have the accent and they know how to pronounce the words. Um, but it's just and it's also it was a Prince Award winning book, so it won
Okay.
that teen award.
So it's in verse about a poet. Um, what kind of poems does the character her write?
Her poetry is just about like being a teenager
Okay.
and kind of just being in high school, having just like being a high school girl, like she ends up having this crush on this guy and they kind of start this very cautious budding romance, but she's very, very, her mother is very, very strict. Like, no boys, no dating. You need to go to church with me every Wednesday and Sunday, and just very, her mother just wasn't about her having any kind of boys around at all. So, and it does have a Catholic overtones because the mother is Catholic in the book, so there's that strong kind of Catholic overtone to it as well. And so it's just kind of her poetry is just about her being a teenage girl and just discovering what it is to be a teenage girl. And also in the book, her brother comes out as gay, and it's a big secret again. But I don't know. It's just like about these little secrets that her and her brother have, or that she has, and it's just a very good book. Yeah,
I'm
and yeah. Go ahead, Penny.
I'm thinking of that Jacqueline Woodson book. Is it Another Brooklyn? That's
Brown Girl
also in
Dreaming
verse.
is
Hmm?
Brown Girl Dreaming in verse too.
Yes, that was it. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Brown Girl Dreaming. That is kind of similar to me, although I haven't read the book you're reading.
yeah. You know what, Penny? You're very right. I didn't even think of that, but the similarities are very similar because again, kind of that really urban setting, New York
Yeah.
City. Um,
And books in verse, they sound scary but hearing it in your head, like if you do the audiobook or as you're reading it, to me, it's more emotional. It's more, it gets me engaged more, I
Mhm.
think, than a textbook because just the language kind of engages all of your senses and makes you take time to really understand each sentence that you're reading because the way it's set up, you can't just keep plowing through this paragraph. You know what I mean? You have to stop a minute and think about what you're reading and the way it's set up and how it sounds in your head. So it's more, I think, of an experience.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why when I picked this book up to read, I knew it was like, I'm going to listen to it because I listened to Brown Girl Dreaming as well.
Oh,
And,
I read it. I didn't listen. Was it good?
and
Did Whitson narrate it?
yeah, she narrated it and it was just excellent. I mean, I found with this book and like the Brown Girl Dreaming book, with the audio book, you see the picture they're painting. Again, I don't know again if it's maybe because it's poetry, but and it and the unique thing with this book is she's a poet and this book is written in verse and and yeah, so it's just an interesting concept, but the imagery is very strong in the book and it's abstract, but you can see her emotions. You can see what she's going through. Um, just her high school life, her family life, her budding romance with her boyfriend. It's yeah, and parts of it brought me back to like me being in high school, which is I think that's a good thing because it can be hard to be transported back to like that high school feeling. But I found with this book, I felt like, oh yeah, I remember that's how I felt in high school. Like that's a very, I think, whimsical feeling, and it's really, really hard to capture in a book. I mean,
So
because
that's
it's memory.
would it be a good book for like a mom to read along with their daughter? I mean, they would both like it, a
I
teen and a
I
parent.
think you could, yeah. I think it would have something to offer the mom and the daughter. And it's different enough, but also relatable enough for a teen and a mom to enjoy, I think.
Nice. And let me know the title one more time so people can. It's
The Poet X,
and what's the author's name?
Elizabeth Acevedo,
Spell that one.
Acevedo.
Okay, in case anybody's looking up in the catalog and putting a hold on it right this minute, or go to Libby and get the downloadable audio because it sounds like a great one to listen to. Okay, it's Anna's up now. Anna. From
Hi.
East Grand Rapids. And you two are at the East Grand Rapids branch right now, aren't you?
It's true.
So,
Yeah.
Anna, what are you reading?
Yeah. I brought this is one that I submitted to the Kaleidoscope, so folks might have seen it already, but I'm excited to talk about it more in depth. It's called Sitting Pretty. The View from My Ordinary, Resilient, Disabled Body by Rebecca Tossig. It's a memoir kind of in a series of short essays. And I first came across Rebecca on Instagram. I can't remember how or where, but I first was drawn to her because her writing is just really beautiful. She's a really talented writer, and she distills down her experience in the world really well. And I think she's also probably close to my age, so I related to a lot of just kind of cultural stuff and like kind of generational stuff from her experience. But this book is just really well put together and gives a really beautiful kind of insight into her life and kind of what it's like to experience the world in her body and what her relationship with her wheelchair has been like throughout her life, because she's been using a wheelchair since she was about 8, so most of her life. And and kind of how she's processed what disability looks like for her and for other people, and how she tries to translate that for other people. She's a professor as well. She's taught in high school and in college, often like related to topics around disability. So she's had a lot of engagement with young people trying to kind of discuss how what our preconceived notions might be about other people in terms of like physical appearance, and also in terms of what we label disability and what's visible and what's not visible as well, because her chair is so highly visible. Yeah, so she's just very relatable without coming off kind of bitter or self-righteous or angry, or but with valid kind of criticisms and observations about our society that a lot of stuff I even took for granted, and I still am kind of thinking, and I read this book months and months ago, and it still kind of has stuck with me.
That is so fascinating, because I've never read a book from the perspective of someone in a wheelchair before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I have a million questions now that makes me want to read the book. Because we talk in the library all the time about books being windows and mirrors, and we want to have both of them in the library. Mirrors so we can see ourselves, so we can see that other people are in the same situation we are, and we can identify with them, but also windows into all the different experiences that are out there. And that is one that I would love to learn more about. Anna, can you say, was there any one revelation that you had from reading that? Anything?
Yeah, I have a piece. Do you mind if I read a little bit of it? There are a couple spots that I really jumped out to me. She talks about like kind of how we put people with disabilities in their own little category that we assume is a minority and doesn't apply to most of us. And she talks about how that's kind of a biased way of defining disability, and kind of like she talks about how if we live long enough, all of us, without exception, will become disabled. This is a prerequisite to having, living in, being in a body. The idea that some of us are firmly fixed in the able-bodied category is a fiction. A world built on speed, productivity, more, and far too few bathrooms and bathroom breaks does not consider or care for the actual bodies we live in. In other words, ableism affects all of us, whether we consider ourselves disabled or not.
That is so true.
Yeah, it really gave me pause for thought that it can all be connected to like the bigger idea of ableism, even if I might not think of myself as having like a specific visibility.
And we've got Beth, who's commenting as she's watching that's powerful if we live long enough, ...
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to say I'm 56, and I've already lived. I mean, not to diminish any condition anyone has, but the things that start to happen to the body are starting to happen to mine, where I can't walk sometimes as much as I used to be able to. I can't lift what I used to be able to lift. I don't last long enough as long in the heat. I mean, all those things I took for granted, that I can just do this, and I don't want to be a whiner, you know what I mean? When I'm really not just accepting my body for what it can do now.
Yeah. That's a good point, Penny. I mean, I pulled a back muscle a couple weeks ago, and just having that pulled back muscle, it was such a hindrance to even just getting in and out of my car. And that's just a back muscle. That's just, so I don't know. It's just, I think reading a book like that would really put a lot of things in perspective, and, you could empathize or just,
see someone else's point of view. Yes. So thanks, Anna. Hold that one up one more time, because you've got that with you. Sitting pretty.
Rebecca Tossig.
Thank you.
And she, her Instagram is a wonderful follow, because since she wrote this book, she has gotten married and had a baby. So being a parent with a disability is a whole nother interesting kind of world that she's entered into.
And I'm going to say that for those of us unfortunate enough to have a child with a disability, can be another complete world that no one realizes either. And yes, we'll have to write a book about that one too. So I'm going to move back over to Shaunna. Shaunna, you've got another book to talk about, don't you?
I do. And I have my book from the previous one.
Oh, yay. Thank you. The Poet F. There it is. That's
Yep.
Cool.
a nice cover, yeah.
Yeah. And so I must have been on a teen take because this is my second book, a teen graphic novel.
Move it over a little bit. There we go.
There we go. George Takei, They Called Us Enemy.
Oh, I've heard a lot about that book. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a graphic novel, right?
It's a graphic novel, so it has, pictures, and it is teen. But I read this book when it first came out, maybe about a year ago. And for those of you that don't know, George Takei, he was on Star Trek in the 70s, I believe. And I believe he's of Japanese descent. And he was, a prominent actor of Japanese descent during that time frame when that really wasn't common. And so when he was young, his family and they were part of the Japanese internment during World War II in the U.S. And what I loved about this book is that it's telling this part of American history that we're not very familiar with. And it's, first of all, it's just the graphic novel format is so well suited to the telling of this story and just the journey they went through. But it's just done in a way where they were just leading this normal life. World War II happened, Pearl Harbor happened, and then their lives were just turned upside down. His family, they were, I believe, out in the California area. They were hardworking, middle class, and then they were forced into these internment camps in like the middle of nowhere in the U.S. I think one of them was just out in nowhere environments. They were
desert, wasn't it?
Yeah, like Oklahoma or something. Yeah. So it just is fascinating because he has lived it, and so here he is really telling his history. And also from the point of view of his parents, because he was young and he had, I think, a younger brother, and pretty much raised most of his formative years were in the Japanese internment camps in the U.S. And how they started off in one, they pretty much could only bring the belongings that they could bring with them.
Yeah.
And then they ended up moving to another internment camp, I think in Northern California. I might have that wrong, but and just how, and what else really resonated with this was the resiliency of their community and their culture. They would have like community leaders in these internment camps who would be kind of, they'd go to the head guard and have discussions and say, well, we need this and we need that. How they would still try and celebrate their culture. And it just was a really, really good book. It really stayed with me after I read it. And what is really nice is at the end, they do kind of give a synopsis of George Takei and how he really has been very much a part of just the Asian American movement in America and just bringing kind of that stuff to light. So,
yay.
Mm-hmm.
Can I see any of the art? And graphic novels, I always make people show us some of the art just because so much of it is really gorgeous. Do you have anything?
Yeah. Let me find one that's good.
Yes, because when authors make it a graphic novel, I feel like they do it for a purpose. And sometimes the pictures are just so great. Now that's inside a camp that's a picture of, right?
Yeah, that would be inside of a camp.
Yeah.
And then this is the back cover. So Bliss is...
Oh, his family.
That's his family. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that looks really interesting.
Yeah, I think the mother actually gave birth in the camp to their little sister. Yeah.
And it's just so hard for anyone to believe in your country. You're at war with another country and you are the enemy.
Yeah.
In your own home.
Yeah.
It's very hard to imagine.
Yeah, the graphic novel does a really good job of just explaining this part of history in a very well thought out way, and just explaining it like this is what happened. This is just what happened. And yeah, I think teen graphic novels are good for that kind of
Now, George Takei can also be very funny. I mean, he's known for his humorous writing and his humor. Is he all, funny in the book, or is he pretty serious and straightforward?
There are, I think, some funny moments, like I know in the book, like it does, like the boys are still the boys and playing ball and getting muddy. And, they kind of have their own little, they may be in this camp, but they don't really know any better. So life goes on.
Right. Kids will be kids no matter where they are.
Yep. So, and that's another thing I was amazed with, was just how they adapted. They just adapted and really pulled together as community. And
Yay. So it sounds ultimately uplifting a book. Is it? Would you say?
Yeah, I will say I came away just feeling like enlightened that I had learned about this part of U.S. history, but also just kind of like, okay, that happened, but he made it through. I mean, I'm sure, there were some scars he had to go through, but yeah, it is an enlightening story. Yes.
I just checked out this new nonfiction book called The Eagles of Heart Mountain, and it's about this football team of Japanese teenagers who formed a lots of teams. Can I think of the word? And started playing football, and then started playing other white high schools around them. I think this is Wyoming or something, and started beating them all. Started winning like crazy, and they're kind of this little snippet of history that I had never heard of, so I'm excited to read it.
Yay. Is that a graphic too?
No, it's a big nonfiction, so we'll see.
Don't be afraid. They're very interesting and good reads too. I'm always pushing the nonfiction. I love nonfiction. So what's your second book, Miss Anna?
Yeah, I have another disability related one. This is it.
Disability Visibility.
So it's a collection of essays. It's edited by Alice Wong, but the authors are a really wide span of experiences and kind of styles. There's some, there's a eulogy in here. There's some blog posts. There's some testimony at Congress. There are letters. It's all kind of a variety of styles, and it's a whole span of experiences too. There are folks with fibromyalgia and autism, and a couple of women who are deaf-blind. One who uses a seeing dog, but really beautifully kind of explains how the dog doesn't lead her, but they're kind of like a team, and they kind of form one organism when they work together, and are such this intimate partnership, which is really cool. Some of them a lot of them are hard to read. It's a little bit bleak at times, so I don't know if they have content warnings at the beginning of every piece in case you're a little more sensitive or just kind of want a heads up, because some of them are just pretty difficult to read and some pretty bleak experiences. But all of them are really enlightening and kind of empathy stretching, kind of like my other book too. The stretching of the empathy is my biggest takeaway. Because there are, I don't know, so many ways to be kind of left out of society and kind of not be catered to or not thought of. And so this is a great way of kind of letting people have a voice and talk about what it's like to live in their bodies or in their brains. So just really good, important and hard, but good.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And both of you brought such great books. I have a new list. It's a librarian's liabilities that we have lists to read that are this long, and hopefully I will get to it. So thank you both for coming. It was great to meet you. Next week I've got Monica, also at the East Grand Rapids in Ada branches, and she's going to be talking with Vanessa from the Cascade branch about pairings of teen and adult books that go together. So if you have a teen, next week's Tuesday night will be a great one to see. So everyone have a good night, and I hope to see you next Tuesday.
Thanks, Penny.
Thanks, Penny.